All right, everybody. Good morning. We've spent way too much time talking about head coaching candidates for the Seahawks. So now it is time to put all that knowledge together into one undeniable and extremely well thought out tier list, talking about who we like, who we love, who we dislike, who we hate, who we're ambivalent on, and try to figure out who we actually want the Seahawks to get and how many alternative plans we would find acceptable before we start getting down to the things that would make us go, eh, and then the things that would make us sick. So, we're going to do an unofficial tier list here. I didn't make the head coaching list on Tier Maker because there's no point. Nobody else would be using it but me. It wouldn't serve much of a purpose. It would take longer to set up than it would be for me to go through it, probably, and then it would be completely useless for everyone else. So we're just going to do it here in Google Sheets. I got 7 tiers, and I've got all the names that we've been evaluating over the last 2 weeks. And basically, I sorted them based on how I feel about them as a head coach of the Seattle Seahawks right now. So I got 7 tiers. The bad ones are at the top, and then as we go down, we get to the good ones. We've got minor league, which is basically if the Seahawks had a minor league affiliate, I would be on board with that. Them coaching them, but as far as coaching your NFL team, that's I would be very annoyed if we ended up having to settle for something like that. You got bad. These are candidates that I think are bad. You got candidates forgettable. This is just, it's not the worst. I can see some silver linings, but overall, I can't shake the feeling that we should be able to do a little bit better. And there, at the end of the day, there are way more good candidates than there are openings. So why are we settling for someone who's forgettable? You've got intriguing, where I don't think I would have a vitriolic reaction to it. And I could definitely see myself thinking, yeah, that might work. That might be what we need. That might cut it. But at the end of the day, again, there are enough good or great or better candidates to where I really think we should be able to do better than somebody who's just kind of intriguing. Like, shouldn't a team like Carolina be the team that has to settle for intriguing, not a team like the Seahawks right now? And then you've got good, which is good, great, which is great, and the dream. I think those three pretty much speak for themselves. So I'm not really going to go into detail on these three. But yeah, basically we're just going to work our way from the worst to the best. And yeah, let's go ahead and dive in here. So minor league, I've got 3 guys. First guy is going to be Aaron Glenn. This is just one that I do not understand. His defenses have been pretty bad in Detroit. Maybe he's the world's most incredible leader. Maybe there's something about his leadership abilities that we're not seeing manifest at all on the field that would make him a much better head coach than coordinator. But I don't know why you'd give him the job when he hasn't even proven he can be a good defensive coordinator yet. It's a defensive hire, which comes with its own problems. If we hire Aaron Glenn, that'll tell me that Jody Allen must be like the worst person on the planet to work with. So that's bottom tier. Next bottom tier guy would be Drew Petzing. This is the Cardinals guy, offensive coordinator. 1 year of coordinator experience. It wasn't very good. And before then, he had some decent stops in the NFL, but nothing that points to future head coach yet. Just needs probably a few more years as a good coordinator before we can even consider it. Too early. And my last guy that I consider to be a minor league level hire would be Patrick Graham. I just, again, it's a defensive guy. Let's just start there. Most of his defenses haven't even been that good. Like, he's had some pretty good defenses. This most recent year in Vegas, they had a good defense, but other than that, very, very dull, very, very boring. A lot of bad stops. Like when he was in New York, they had some good defenses. They also had some bad ones. Like the 2021 defense was bad, just like the whole team was bad. Maybe it wasn't all his fault, but there's some stuff going on there that's totally his fault. And there's just nothing in his resume that made me go, okay, I get this. You could argue that he should be in bad because he does have a lot of NFL experience at least, but I just can't get the motor revved for Patrick Graham as a head coach at all. So minor league for me, and that gets us down to our bad tier. So this is little bit better than minor league. I don't consider any of these hires to be a joke hire like I would these three, but I don't want to make them. So first guy that is bad for me is Raheem Morris. And the main reason why he's here rather than minor league is just he does have head coaching experience in the NFL before. And I do think he's done a really good job since losing that head coaching opportunity. But you could argue he should be minor league just because if we do hire him, the Rams get 2 extra third round picks. So that alone should probably demote him to minor league. But just as a coach, I'm going to put him in bad. He had a head coaching opportunity. It went badly. It went mostly really badly, honestly. He had one decent season, and then the bottom fell out. Um, Honestly, while he's done good stuff with the Rams and he did good stuff with the Falcons, like, I can't take anything away from him. The Rams' defense was much better with Brandon Staley than they've been with Raheem Morris, so I don't even know if he's done a great job there. It hasn't been a great defense. It's been an okay defense, and that was the number one defense in football the year before he got there. So hard for me to look at that and go, yeah, that's a guy who I think deserves another head coaching shot. I want to see him do some great work as a coordinator before I even think about that. Next guy in my bad tier is going to be Brian Johnson. Um, I kind of like his resume, but he just got fired as a coordinator, so it's tough, right? When you get fired as a coordinator because you didn't do your job, it's hard for me to then turn around and say you would be a good head coaching candidate. But the body of work in Philly was respectable. They had a top 8 offense overall this year, and there are some things in his resume that I like what he did with Dak Prescott, what he was able to get out of Jalen Hurts. It's impressive, but he's going to have to land somewhere and show himself as a coordinator for a little bit, I think. 1 year where he ended up getting fired because they didn't like the job he did is not going to cut it. Next guy in the bad tier is going to be Alex Van Pelt. Um, Kind of a tough one because this is another guy who got fired, but I don't know why he got fired. I think he did about as good as he could have done in Cleveland with the quarterback situation they had. So I don't know if I agree with him getting fired, but maybe there's something there that we just don't know about because we're just externally looking at the situation from the outside. This is a guy who actually has a lot of experience as a coach in the NFL. He was I think, a quarterback coach for Aaron Rodgers. He did some work in, like I said, he's been in Cleveland for a little bit here under Stefanski. And Stefanski has done good work, and you'd hope Van Pelt would have picked something up from him. I think he was the Bengals quarterback coach for a couple years as well with Andy Dalton near the end there. But the results just haven't been clean enough for me to suggest he's ready to move on to be a head coach. The Stefanski connection makes me think he's a little better than minor league, though. Next guy we're going to take a look at here is Joe Brady, and I actually like this guy a lot, but he's got 7 games of coordinator experience, basically, or good coordinator experience. He was a coordinator for 2 years before then, but it was bad, like really bad. And he's just too young, so hiring him would feel like a desperation move, but I do like him a lot. I want to be very clear about that. If we come back to him in a few years after he's had a run of success in Buffalo, that's different. But as of right now, he's just so inexperienced and so unproven that I have to put him in bad, even though I do find him interesting in his own way. And my final bad guy is going to be Lou Anarumo, the Bengals defensive coordinator. It's another defensive hire. His defenses haven't even been that great outside of 1, maybe 2 years. And he's been around a long time. He's probably one of those guys that is just meant to always be a coordinator. There would be nothing exciting about Big Lou becoming a head coach for the Seahawks. So that's my bad tier. Next up, we're going to do forgettable. These are guys that I could see some silver linings on, but overall, we got to be able to do better than this. First guy will be Aviro, currently the Panthers defensive coordinator. Um, I do like him. I think he's done a good job so far in his NFL career. I think that he did great work in Denver the previous year. I think that Carolina just gave him very little to work with. I think he did about as good as could be done in Carolina, given he had the worst offense in the league behind him. But it's a defensive guy. We don't need another defensive coach if we can avoid it, unless he's a truly special guy. And I don't know if Aviro's that. He probably needs a little more experience before becoming a head coach. Like, let's see him replicate what he did in 2022 with another defense before we allow him to actually become a head coach. But I can't deny the fact that I do like him. And it wouldn't shock me if he got a head coaching shot right now. I just don't feel ready to be the team that gives it to him. Next guy that I find to be forgettable would be Brian Flores. There's just too much smoke around his personality being not good for me to feel like he should be the guy. I do think he did a fairly decent job in Miami, all things considered. He did show that on a fundamental level he can be a good head coach, which puts him above a lot of guys on this list who are completely unproven in that capacity. And maybe there were some things going on in Miami outside of his control that made things look bad. But he's another defensive guy, which we're trying to avoid if possible. And it's not like his results in Miami were overwhelmingly good. So for me, I can't quite give the thumbs up to Brian Flores, but I'm not going to say he's bad either, right? There's some stuff there that is credible for sure. Next guy that I would find to be somewhat forgettable would be Spags. When he was a head coach with the Rams years ago, it was awful. One of the worst head coaches ever, maybe in terms of results. But he's done a lot of good things since then, and I can't just wipe that away. So if he's deserving of a second chance, then I'm not here to say otherwise. My problem is he should be getting his second chance somewhere else, not here, where we're actually trying to hit a bit of a home run here. Like, this is a defensive guy, again, another defensive guy. We're trying to stay away from those, even the good ones. If we're going to get a defensive guy, we want it to be a great one. And Spags, I mean, the ineptitude he showed as a head coach the first time through, it's hard to wipe that away. The what I can say is he's done a really good job in Kansas City overall. That's not an easy job, to have a lot of your money getting sucked up by the offense and still put together a really good defense. This year they've been downright elite. He might deserve an opportunity, but I'm not sure if I'm ready for it to be here. My final guy that is forgettable would be Mr. Adam Stenavich of the Packers. I am impressed. I just need to see more of it. I just need to see more from Stenavich. He's 1 year coordinator experience, a little bit of quarterback coach work, and the work he's done has been respectable, but not over the top. So to me, Stenavich just needs a little more time in the oven. If the Packers have a really good offense next year, I think it'll be his time, but I need to see it. I need to see it. Okay, so now we're getting into the guys who are at least a little better than that. I've got the intriguing tier next up, and these are guys who I would not be upset about. If we got any of these guys, I don't think I'd be upset about it. I think I would just say I wish we could have done better, but sometimes you can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good or something like that. Now, I would argue in this case maybe we should, because we don't have any reason to settle for somebody who's just merely intriguing, but if that's what it is, then I'm willing to see what's up. At the end of the day, remember, we don't get to see these interviews. We don't know how these guys do in interviews. We don't know how they interview with these teams. We don't know what they want. We don't know if they want to come here. I understand there are circumstances, but I would like to do better than guys in this next tier. But let's take a look at them. First guy is going to be Eric Bieniemy. This one's really tough. I put him in intriguing because his resume is golden, but there's clearly something wrong there. And I want to be very clear about this. Every team is checked out on Bieniemy as a head coach. It's not just one or two teams. Every single team is like, don't touch this guy as a head coach. He's not even getting interviews. So when he does get interviews, he probably does really, really badly at them, or there are some personality issues, or they're afraid of his legal issues or something. But I feel like whatever it is, it's real and legitimate. But that kind of has to go up against his resume. He's an Andy Reid guy. I love the Andy Reid tree, even if it doesn't always work out. And if we hired him, I'd be like, okay, he must have done good in our interview, and that's good enough. So I'll roll with it. But Bieniemy, I can't put him in good because clearly there's something not right there. I just don't know exactly what it is because I'm not a fly on the wall. Next guy that I put under intriguing would be Bobby Slowick. There's a lot of positive hype around this guy. He's a Shanahan tree guy, which is exciting, even if it might be indicative of someone who just kind of rides coattails. And he did do a pretty good job in Houston in year one. I just want to see a little bit more before I call him a good hire. I just look at him and I go, okay, I've got coordinators out there who are doing a better job with similar levels of talent and have more coordinator experience. Meanwhile, this guy is not even top 10 in offense for 1 year after holding Shanahan's clipboard for several years in San Fran. And I'm supposed to get pumped up about that. I don't think I can do that. So Bobby Slowick to me is intriguing. There's I think there is a level of hype with him that doesn't exist for a guy like Stenavich that makes me think he's a little better than a guy like Stenavich. But both guys have a lot in common, if we're being honest, right? One good year as a coordinator, one decent year as a coordinator, really, not even good. And people are kind of jumping up and down. I do like Slowick a little bit better, but not by much. Next intriguing candidate for me would be Dan Quinn, and I know this one's going to be controversial, but I want to be very clear here. Whatever happened against Green Bay in the playoffs, Dan Quinn has done about as good a job as you can do as a defensive coordinator the last 3 years. He took over a terrible defense, made them immediately great for the last 3 seasons. He's hit on so many picks, hit on some late value picks, by the way, done a great job replacing injured players and players lost to free agency, working in a situation where he doesn't necessarily get the pick of the litter in terms of free agency because a lot of money's going to the offense right now. And he's done really, really good. I think that people sell him short because he's coming off such a humiliating loss where, yeah, things went really badly, but Dan Quinn also brings some degree of success at being a head coach to the table from his Atlanta stop. He did do some things right in Atlanta, regardless of what anyone wants to say. I don't think it's good because he is defensive, which we're trying to avoid if at all possible because of all the problems that brings, and because there is some stuff he's doing, even defensively, that I don't like his lack of attention to linebackers. He's great for pass rush. He's great for safeties and corners, but it seems like he just kind of ignores the linebacker position these days, and that's why you get what you get sometimes in Dallas, where they get run all over. So he would have to correct that. I don't love all of the things he's doing schematically, but I do think it would be a significant upgrade on what Carroll's given us. So even though Dan Quinn is kind of the antithesis of intriguing, I am putting him in that tier because I think that's about where he belongs as a candidate for this team. Next guy who's intriguing for me would be Todd Monken. If he wins the Super Bowl this year, which seems like is what's going to happen, then he will have won the championship 3 years in a row. Done phenomenal work at Georgia. Done phenomenal work in Baltimore. Did great work at his previous stops before then. Had a couple stops in the NFL that went well. Was a head coach at the college level for a while. Um, he might be one of those guys that's just better off always being a coordinator. I can admit that's possibly the case. He kind of gives that vibe. But if we were to get Todd Monken, I would definitely go. I think he's going to do great things for this offense. Again, I want to stress this. The Ravens offense was below average last year, and Todd Monken made them elite. I know there were some players added. I know the players got better, but Todd Monken has done some remarkable things over the last 3 years at two different locations. So definitely intriguing. I'm not going to go good because he does have that air of a guy who's probably just better off always being a coordinator. Next up, the final guy who I have in the intriguing tier would be Mike Kafka. Might be a little overzealous, and if he gets a head coaching job now, he's kind of jumping the line a little bit. But I like the Andy Reid tree. I like what he did in Kansas City. I think there was some really impressive stuff that happened in Kansas City with him. And look, what he did in 2022 with very little talent on that Giants offense is actually impressive. They had a mediocre offense with Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley overrated as heck, and no receivers, no real tight ends, not a very good offensive line. And he got them to the point where they were okay. And they got to the playoffs, won a playoff game. I feel like it's too early for Kafka, so I'm not going to say he's a good candidate, but I would be intrigued. I would be like, okay, I feel like we should have done better, but I can definitely see this working out because I like this guy, what this guy comes from. I like where he comes from, et cetera, et cetera. So those are the guys I would deem as intriguing. Now we're getting into the guys who I actually think I'd be pretty excited about. Like if we get one of these guys, I'm making a video where I'm clearly very happy about the hire, and I'm feeling like things are headed on the right track for the Seattle Seahawks. So let's take a look at these guys. First guy that I have in the good tier is Mike Vrabel, and this is an interesting one, right? If Mike Vrabel comes by himself and makes some nobody never heard of him before, don't know what to think of him offensive coordinator hire, then I kind of would bump him down to intriguing. But if he brings Arthur Smith with him or makes some other super high profile and sexy offensive coordinator hire, like, I don't know, Mike Kafka, let's just say, then I would bump Mike Vrabel up to great. So to me, it depends on the offensive coordinator thing with him heavily. But this is a guy with proven NFL head coaching chops. This is a guy who's won and won a lot at Tennessee. And he's proven that even though he's a defensive first head coach, he's also got proven success on the offensive side of the ball, really, when you think about it. That Tennessee team has often been more good than bad on offense than defense. So there's a lot to like with Vrabel. And if he brings the right coordinator with him, like an Arthur Smith, for example, you're getting the benefit of having a long-term offensive coach all the same because it's going to be a very long time before anybody gives Arthur Smith that chance. And you got to figure Vrabel would have the leg up on getting Arthur Smith to come with him to Seattle if he came here. So Vrabel's good, but if he makes a good, if he has a partnership with Arthur Smith that he can transfer over, then I'd bump him up to great. Next guy in the good tier would be Dave Canales. Looks like he's going to Carolina, but he's been in the Seahawks coaching tree for so long, and he's done such a good job with everything he did. I'm going to put him on the fast track a little bit. I know there isn't a huge difference between him and Slowick in theory, or even Stenovich, but Canales did such great work with Geno. He did such great work with Wilson. He did such great work with guys like Baldwin and Tate and Lockett, and even a guy like a Jermaine Kearse, that I feel like he would be a great guy to bring here because he'd still get to work with Geno. He'd still get to work with maybe Lockett. I know at this point that doesn't matter that much, but you're bringing those guys over there, and it's like you've kind of brought back the QB coach that really helped Geno Smith play the best football of his life. So to me, that kind of elevates him a little bit. And the fact that he also got great things out of Baker Mayfield proves that outside of the context of Geno Smith, he's probably a really good quarterback whisperer. And the next quarterback you get, Canales, is going to make him eat too. So I'm going to say Canales is a good candidate. There's a little bit of home cooking there, admittedly, but I think it's justified in this case. Next good candidate, and this is a guy who's off the board now, Brian Callahan. He's been already hired by the Titans, so we're not really going to talk about him, but I would have put him in the good tier. So let's just go down to the great tier here and wrap things up. First guy in my great tier is going to be Frank Smith, the Miami offensive coordinator. He's got 2 good years of being a coordinator, including 1 fantastic year. And I think he did it with a quarterback that's just okay. 2 is okay. Like, you come to Seattle, you're working with a quarterback who is maybe better than what you had in Miami. And I know what some people would say about that, but I don't think there's a big difference between Tua and Geno at all. And you get him a great quarterback, watch out. Could be off to the races. There is a little bit of risk here. He could just be a puppet for Mike McDaniel. Mike McDaniel could be the wisdom behind everything happening in Miami offensively. That's possible. But his resume is that of a guy who deserves a chance as a head coach. What he did in Miami this year is very impressive. If he came here, he would be working with different, but nonetheless almost about as good wide receivers as he had in Miami. And he'd also be working with some primo running backs. He'd have a chance to rebuild the offensive line. By the way, that Miami offensive line is not good, so it's not like that's anything he's not used to. And he also has a tight end background, which would help when we try to develop some of the new tight ends we have to bring in this offseason. So to me, Frank Smith is a great candidate. I would love to have him. He's one of the guys who I think should be getting more hype right now. Next guy who I'm going to have in this great tier would be Ben Johnson. We've talked about him enough, but he's great. He's got two really nice years of coordinator experience in Detroit. Done great things without having the best talent. He's got a good quarterback, but not a great quarterback. He's got good receivers. He's got some talent at running back. They do have a big investment in the offensive line there, but guess what? We can make that same investment too if we want to. So Ben Johnson, great hire. Would be an absolute dream to bring him in here and see what he's got. And at the end of the day, we were looking for offensive guys primarily, and he seems to be the du jour primo cut of offensive wonderkind coaching in this offseason. The next guy we've got in the great tier, the last guy, is Mike Macdonald. I know he's a defensive guy, but he's way too good. He's making an elite defense out of not elite pieces at all. He's got Jadeveon Clowney and what's the guy's name? Justin Matabuke as his edge rushers. He's got some good players. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to hate on him. He's got Roquan Smith. He's got Kyle Hamilton. But a lot of that defense is made up of guys who are not considered to be hyper elite players. And McDonald is just crushing it. And he took over a defense in Baltimore that was not good when he got there. When he got there, they were below average to bad. And he's made them really, really good, and now he's made them downright elite. And it's also the kind of defense that seems to drive the Kyle Shanahan offense crazy. So I will bring in Mike Macdonald if I need to, and I'll deal with the repercussions of having a defensive head coach if I need to. Because what he would do to the defense would be so good that I think it would be worth it, and we can try to find a way around the offensive coordinator problem if McDonald's working his magic on the defense. So that's the last part of my great tier, and the dream is occupied by one guy, and unfortunately there's going to be very little to say here because he's gone as of yesterday, Jim Harbaugh. But he was the perfect candidate, basically. I guess you could throw Bill Belichick in here too, but honestly, given the fact that he's going to demand GM responsibilities, I don't even know if I would put him in that tier. And I know that's sacrilegious to say, but how can you sign on to the Belichick experience when you know he's a terrible GM and he's going to demand GM powers? That's a tough one. I don't know how to decipher that. And we're not getting him anyway, so what's the point? But yeah, that's my tier list of all the coaches we looked at over the last couple weeks here. My top tier right now would be Frank Smith, Ben Johnson, and Mike Macdonald. Next tier would be Vrabel, who could bump up if he brings the right OC, and Canales. And then we kind of move down into the next grouping of guys who I would be okay with, but begrudgingly, Bieniemy, Slowick, Quinn, Monken, Kafka. And then we get down into the guys that would make me wonder what the heck is going on with this organization that we have to settle for that. Evero, Flores, Spagnuolo, Stenovich. And then the guys who would just kind of make me annoyed. Morris, Johnson, Van Pelt, Brady, Anarumo. And then the guys who would make me think this is all a joke and I need to find another sport to watch. Glenn, Petsing, and Patrick Graham. So let me know what you think. I'll see you guys later. Go Hawks. And yeah, we're just trying to put all this knowledge together in one place. I know it was a long video, but we needed to dive into all this. All right. See you guys later.